Well, hello and welcome to our backyard garden here in the South Carolina upstate. It is September 12th, 2025. This is episode 28 for the year, and it's a beautiful Friday morning, perfectly clear sky. Right now it's about maybe 65, 70 degrees, somewhere in there. Just perfect weather to look at our garden, and so we're going to get started. This part of the garden I always start in because it's at the top of the hill, and we have these huge cleome that are still blooming. We had some others along the wall here, and also some snapdragons, but they had all died and looked pretty bad, so I cut those back last week, and we still have these growing, and they look like they're going to give us at least a few more weeks of color. At some point in the very near future, I'm going to have to get back in here and really chop this part of the garden back. This is supposed to be solid irises. Unfortunately, it gets other things in it, like these gigantic canna, which I am not a fan of. They don't look that good. Ours have not done well. I think they have either a parasite or a nutritional problem. The leaves have never done well. They had a few flowers on them, the bright red flowers, but even those are done. And now all they're doing is giving a kind of a scaffolding for this one morning glory. It's got one flower on it, but I would rather just chop those out and try to get them out of there once and for all. The other thing that's even a bigger problem are these holly that just grow wildly. This whole area was all holly bushes when we moved in here a few years ago, and unfortunately we took those out and put these irises in, which I prefer, but the holly roots are nearly impossible to eradicate, so you have to go through. I went back in, I think, April and chopped all these out, and in just 6 months they have come back with a vengeance. Actually 5 months, and so I need to get back in there. Probably, I would say realistically, 3 or 4 times a year I'm going to have to do in the future to keep them at bay so that they don't take over that bed. Coming down here we have a big daisy which bloomed in the spring, but as you can see, it's got a lot of buds on it, so it looks like it's going to bloom again. A lot of our flowers down here bloom twice a year, so we'll look forward to that. In the meantime, there's a big morning glory that's been growing kind of over the top of this. A couple flowers, but nothing to justify how the vines have taken over. So I'm going to really try to get all that off of there so that the daisy can bloom later on here in the fall. Got another morning glory that's grown. In fact, you can see all the way up the downspout there. I don't know how well you can see that. I'll try to close in. There we go. Some morning glory flowers, and that's a good 12 feet up. But got some other morning glories here. Unfortunately, our experience with morning glories has not been all that great. We do get some flowers, but the number of flowers that we get for the amount of vegetation and how much they take over everything else in this part of the garden is not necessarily worth the effort. So I'm not sure what I want to do with these. I have not determined yet if I want to have these next year or not. As I say, the flowers themselves are nice. They're very, very pretty, of course, but you don't get a ton of them. I mean, if this was just completely covered with blue, then I would say, sure, it's worth it, but they really aren't, and that's where the debate comes in. Got another plant here, this pokeweed that I started to talk about last week. It's completely covered with these morning glories, and fortunately we have another pokeweed over here that is a little more substantial. I first started talking about these last week. I didn't know what they were. I thought they looked fairly ornamental because they would get these nice little white flowers. You see a few of the white flowers left, and then they get these green berries that eventually turn purple. And I've started to see more and more of these around the area now that I've recognized it. And it is a weed. As I say, it's called pokeweed. And I thank one of our viewers who gave me the comment on the YouTube listing, because I really didn't know what they were. The key with these: don't eat the berries. They may look like they taste good. They are very poisonous, and they will make you very, very sick. So please, please do not eat these. Do not eat the leaves if you're so inclined, because they will mess you up. But they look nice, and it's worth having, because we don't really have anything else up in this part of the yard. And we had one knockout rose, which has, actually it's right here. It's not really doing much. It'll probably come back in the spring, but this has never been a good spot for this particular one. It's kind of getting overshadowed by the hydrangeas. We have 4 hydrangeas down through here. These peaked probably 6 weeks ago, and they just sort of slowly fade from bright white to this sort of pale green color with the pink highlights, and then eventually they just turn brown. And actually got some of those right here, and they'll stay on until next spring. In fact, I think some of these are some of these brown seed pods are left over from last year, because I don't really cut them off. I just kind of let nature do that, although I probably need to be a little bit more aggressive with that. Now, as we look at these hydrangeas, they're huge. Some of them are 8 to 10 feet tall, and our neighbor has one that's probably 12 to 15 feet tall. It's a little bit older, and unfortunately these have a tendency to sort of choke out everything around them. So we have a nice butterfly bush here, but it hasn't been able to do a whole lot because it's in the shadow of the hydrangea. And same thing with some of the other plants that we've put in here. And a few things have done well in the spring before the hydrangeas really get going, like digitalis and some of our Asiatic lilies. You can see the remains of those. Those all bloomed back in May and maybe into June. Also a few clematis that are hanging on, but most of the plants that we have here are kind of struggling. Now, one thing that has done well is this. It's a variation of a viburnum. You can barely see it back there. It looks just like almost looks like a weed, but it's an actual bush. And it puts out little tiny white flowers that turn into little berries, but the birds eat those right away, so you don't even get to really see the berries too much. But it's just greenery, and it helps to kind of build up our property line here. Of course, our neighbors have these huge evergreens that are, I think in some cases is 30 feet tall. And then we have this stuff down here. So we have a very, very prominent border, which is kind of nice. Gives us some privacy. And I started to talk about this secondary butterfly bush here with the bright sort of magenta colored flowers. This one's doing well because it's not in the shadow of the hydrangea, so it's had a chance to get pretty big, and it can kind of fend for itself. Big knockout rose back in here. It's actually giving us a few flowers here in the fall, and it has a big clematis growing over top of it. In the spring, this is absolutely gorgeous. It's covered with red flowers, and then the white flowers of the clematis on top of it, and it's a sight to see. It's one of the highlights of the entire garden, but this time of year there's not a lot to look at, unfortunately. And strangely enough, as I look back in here, we have a lot of things over at the fence that I don't really look at too often. There's a butterfly bush that has kind of come up on its own. You can just barely see some of the flowers back in there. We did not plant that, it just sort of came up on its own, so we'll see what it does. It's got the same color as the one that we have in our front yard, if you saw our video earlier from the front. And so I'm not sure how it got back here, but that's the great thing about nature. Things happen like that. It's one of the fun things about gardening. You just never quite know what you're going to see, even from week to week. We have a few impatiens down here. We've got calla lily. Looks nice, but it's done blooming. We did not plant that one. It just sort of came up on its own. We have several other calla lilies over in the other part of the yard that we're going to get to in a couple minutes. The impatiens, not doing too well this year. I think I probably will not do impatiens next year. They have not really thrived back in here. Not sure why. Don't know if it's the soil or the heat or what exactly, but they just have not done real well. Strange thing though, and this has just come out since last week, digitalis. I mentioned that earlier. This is primarily a spring flower, but here we are getting kind of a late bloomer. These have spread out. We put in about 5 or 6 of these a few years ago, and right now, from one end of the garden to the other, we probably have 12 or 15, and we'll probably have even more next year. And here we have our azalea, doing really well, getting some of the bright pink flowers. It's kind of a teaser for what we're going to get, I think, a little bit later in the fall. Usually these bloom a second time. They bloomed like crazy in the spring. And we had more flowers actually last week. They've kind of finished up, but I think come October we're going to get a lot more of these. So we're looking forward to that. I cleaned up this area a couple weeks back. We had a lot of brush back in here and other things, but it looks a little bit better now. Hostas here. We have one wisteria that's still hanging on. I don't know what's going to come of that. I just try to support it and hope it'll come along, because I wanted it to grow along the fence over there like this one has, but we'll find out come next spring. A couple more azaleas up in here. Got our lamb's ear, which is just sort of hanging out now until next year. It gave us the midsummer flowers, but not much else. Got one daisy here, and then some others that are about to come out. We talked about the daisy that's further up in the yard, so we should be getting some nice white daisy flowers soon. This is a knockout rose, gigantic knockout rose. This one has been absolutely prolific. It's just covered with flowers. It has been all year, and this is the one that had been eaten down to the ground by beavers last summer, and it came back on its own. It's an amazing plant, very resilient, gorgeous blood red flowers. So some more zinnias from seed here. This one wildflower, we put this in years ago. I don't know the name of it. My wife put it in. She didn't know the name of it either. It just looked good in the garden store, and we put it in, and it's come back every year since then. Looks really good. And we have a similar one over here. It's more of a pink color. It's kind of the same thing. And behind that, nice pink rose, a little tea rose that's doing well. Unfortunately, I need to get back in here and do a lot of deadheading and weeding and so forth. We've got a maple tree there. We've got some other trees growing up along with the weeds in this bed. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Hopefully before the end of the summer. Got some spiderwort here. Not a lot in the way of flowers. We've just really got this one this morning. Some days you get quite a few, and other days not so much. And kind of a strange thing that has happened here. We have these vinca, these little flowers. They have done really well in the past couple of years, and a lot of them have come back from the previous year. Except this year, this is about the only flower that we've gotten, or the only plant, I should say. And there are a couple others by its base. They put out either white or pink, or if you're lucky, lavender colored flowers, and they're fairly prolific, but this year just has not been a good year for those. Not sure why. We've got some other things back in here, calla lilies that are all finished up for the year. A few veronica, still giving us a little bit of this purple color, but for the most part they're done. If you like bees, big bumblebees, get veronica. They're low maintenance, they come back every year, it's a nice perennial, and the bees love it. This is a little tea rose. Obviously I have not deadheaded back here yet. These huge seed pods that are the size of olives, It's keeping these from blooming more. I need to put some time into that. Hopefully this weekend I can do that. Another daisy over here. A nice gardenia here. Oh, if we look closely, we see a little frog on one of the leaves. He doesn't like being photographed, but there he is. We have lots and lots of frogs down here, and you really hear them chirping at night, especially in the spring and early summer. They're starting to go away now when we go out in the evening, but it's always kind of fun, and it's very common to see them on the leaves of the flowers. Another butterfly bush over here, more of a purple color with variegated leaves, and these have done almost a little too well. This is one plant. I really kind of need to cut it back. Although I have to say the number of flowers coming off of this is pretty tremendous. So I don't know that I need to cut it back too much. I cut back our front yard butterfly bush this spring